Okay, hi everybody. So today's video is to really try to explain in a really clear, comprehensive, step-by-step way about why the instruction navel to spine is not a great instruction and it doesn't really give us what we need in our body. So the instruction navel to spine it's a very popular instruction in exercise classes, and I see it all the time. Videos, exercise classes, it's used constantly. Pull your navel to your spine. Okay, so the reasons that it is not a useful instruction, let's start with reason number one, is that because navel to spine doesn't tell me anything about what I should really be doing with my body. So it's very vague, is one way of saying it. It's very vague, but it's also just it can be interpreted different ways. So for example, I can interpret that I'm going to chop my head off for a minute just so you guys can really see what I'm talking about. So navel to spine can be interpreted by some as pull, so if this is a relaxed belly, as pull your belly button in. So then you would be doing this all day long. So doing this all day long, so going from a relaxed belly to this, it actually creates a ton of tension in your body. And it's really hard to have an optimal core system when you've got this going on all day. And then the other thing that a lot of people do when they hear the navel to spine instruction is they do this. So I'll do that again. What I want you to look at is what's happening in this part of my body. So what I just did to do that navel to spine is that I pulled my stomach in, but at the same time, I elevated my ribs up. So I've now, added all this extra tension to my abs, but in doing so, I've also displaced my ribs, and I've also created this kind of, in here, as you can see, it hollows out when I do that. Right, so I've added all this extra tension into my diaphragm. So and at the same time, I've also affected my spine. So in just that simple, innocuous, I'm going to pull just that interpretation. If somebody were to interpret navel to spine as what I showed you, what would ultimately happen is they would be affecting their diaphragm, their core, their spine, and of course I felt a reaction in my pelvic floor as well. So none of that is ideal. So I don't like navel to spine. The first reason is because it's just very vague. It's not really telling me what I want to be doing with my core. And the potential for kind of getting it, I hate the word wrong, but the potential for getting it wrong is huge. Okay, so the other thing is that optimal core strength has very little to do with your ability to just suck your stomach. So again, navel to spine, like pull your belly button in. If your rib cage is displaced relative to your pelvis, I'll show you what that looks like. So if you're someone who stands like that, or if you happen to have more of a rounded curve, right? So if your rib cage is not in a neutral position to begin with, pulling your navel to your spine, so like pulling in, and most people do it all wrong. Again, they tighten, they pull in, they suck in, and that's not, I know that's not what is intentioned when people say navel to spine. They really don't understand what they're trying to teach, but what the student hears, I don't think it's well, maybe it is, tighten your abs, right? So, and tightening your abs doesn't take care of your rib placement. Like it doesn't, if anything, it'll just kind of affect your rib placement negatively. And again, a lot of people come into the issue of core dysfunction by having a pelvic placement issue. So their pelvis is not in its ideal location. I can show you a little bit of what that looks like. That's my puppy, Georgie. So, imagine I'm standing, which I'm not, but who cares, right? So pelvis forward of the ankles. Imagine my ankles were underneath my pelvis. Or a lot of people have a pelvic tucking issue, which does tighten this up, which is not ideal. A lot of people are kind of just standing like this and forward, right? So pulling my navel to my spine or tightening my abs, again, doesn't take care of those relationships. And those relationships are really important for having a functioning core. And having those relationships out of, or having a displacement in those relationships does affect how your core functions, like whether it's able to produce or handle load, produce force, handle load, manage movements, right? So, and then, you know, you take the breathing into that. A lot of people's breathing is all sorts of, you know, like belly breathing and all sorts of stuff. You know, I really go into this in depth in other webinars, so I won't go into it in depth here. But you're tightening your abs all day long then doesn't take care of that relationship either. So it's it's like, I don't know, throwing a, you know, trying to stop a flood by placing a few branches in place. It really, or if anything, it just makes things worse, right? So somebody come up with a good analogy for me, please, because I'm terrible at those. But it's not taking care of the problem, and if anything, it can be making it worse. So, and then the other main huge reason I really don't like the instruction navel to spine is that it doesn't take into account that what you really want for an ideal functional core is the relationship between your breathing, your movement, your spine, and your core. So we had this great example on the Facebook page yesterday where I'm not going to name her by name just to maintain her privacy, but a woman wrote that she goes and gets milk 3 times a week, and she always does the same thing. She leans over, she grabs the gallon of milk, she comes back up. And that for the first time yesterday, when she went to do that movement, she felt her abdominals just reflexively corseting to stabilize her spine, to stabilize her body in movement. And so that's ideal. And it was like this yay moment, as opposed to constantly feeling her abdominals bulging when she's doing any sort of movement. You know, when she goes to reach for that milk, often there's this kind of bulging. So if I were to demonstrate, so holding your stomach in to grab that milk most likely is going to lead you to holding your breath. You can try it. Like if you have to keep your stomach tightly pulled in to lean forward, reach forward, and grab something, you're mostly likely going to be breath holding. Well, we know that breath holding is very negative for your core, right? Now, holding your breath and achieving a move doesn't actually teach your body anything about stability. So it goes back to this idea that what you should ideally be training is your core, your breath, your spine, your pelvic floor, all of it to be working together to be what I call reflexive. I'm sure a lot of other people call it that. But so instead of this navel to spine, okay, pull your navel into your spine. You know, I used to hear teachers in New York say, whenever you're riding the subway and it's really unstable, what you want to do is pull your navel into your spine to handle that. It's like, no, you don't. Your body should say, this is really unstable. What can I do to manage that? Boom, reflexive. Your core kicks in and stabilizes you. And yeah, the core sitting action that would happen would be this drawing in. So when your reflexive core is working to support you ideally, sure, it goes from being soft and relaxed in its natural state to the breath, creating this core sitting action so you can reach, lean, and get something without destroying your back in the process. So it's not that what happens to the muscles isn't this navel moving to your spine, but it's also so much more than that. It's not just your your belly button just doesn't move to your spine. There's this 3-dimensional action happening in your midsection. So it's not just like navel to spine, there's so much more. So that's another reason I hate navel to spine language, is because it's more than just belly button in. I mean, that would imply that would imply all sorts of ways that your body's moving that it's not. I mean, your body is like much more round. There's a lot of circular activity happening in your core. So you really want to train your core to respond to your activities reflexively. And the way to do that is to train your core to respond, to train your core, your breath, your pelvic floor, and your spine to all work together to have this healthy relationship of stability and movement. And pulling your abdominals in, or navel to spine, or laying on the floor and doing a bunch of these crunches and hundreds and all that stuff, it does little to teach your body how to really move in the real world. And you might just be adding all this extra tension to your core, to your breath, to your spine, and to your pelvic floor by just creating this arbitrary tighten everything up. Okay, so I hope this helps. Hit me in the comment box with your questions, and we'll say goodbye to sweet Georgie and to my daughter Amit. Bye. Aren't you sweet?